Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Police and Fire Commission meeting on June 15th, 2022. And first item on the agenda is a call to order. Second item on the agenda is approval of minutes. We had the minutes passed out ahead of time in the pre-read packet that is available on the website. Any questions or motions related to the minutes? Well, they look good to me, so I'll move to approve the minutes as proposed.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes as proposed, raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, we will move on to the third item on our agenda. Any public appearances for non-agenda items?
No one registered online, sir.
Okay, no registrations online, no one here in the room, so we'll move on to agenda item number 4, report from the police department. Chief Morales.
We are working through the summer. We have 2 vacancies, 5 on field training, 1 at the academy. That leaves us with 8 unfilled positions. We had 1 retirement that occurred a week ago. Doug Heimel retired after a full 30 years of service. He did 5 of them in Milwaukee and did the other, the 27 or 28 of them here in Fitchburg. I spoke about him. I think you both were present for our swearing in. He took assignments. It's something that is very tough to do for that many years. It's just strictly take assignments your entire career. And he did it with energy and did it with passion. We all must move on at one time or another, so we congratulate him and pray for him in his next chapter in life. That said, we have another expected retirement coming into the fall and an additional 2 retirements probably coming in at the beginning of the year. That's just 6-7 months away. We do have another hiring process going on as we speak. We'll know more about how that is going to result by around August. We should have some idea of where we're going to be at with that. But that's what we have for the staffing. I could continue to talk about that, but I know we have to be rather efficient today. As far as orderings for the month of May, we had a total of 16 orderings. Ordering average length of time was 2.4 hours. Number of orderings per current unfilled patrol positions was 2.2. Patrol staffing is at 81%. That leaves us 19% unavailable. No significant events. Compared to 2021, we had 9 orderings then, an average of 2.8 hours, however. Number of orderings per unfilled positions was 1.2. Patrol staffing availability then was 80% with 20% unavailable, so that's very similar to this year. No significant events. I can tell you that we're expecting or projecting the orderings for the month of June and July, maybe even August, are going to be rather high, and that's as a result of the different initiatives we have going on that I spoke about at the last meeting. That said, we do have several volunteers that are already requesting to be involved in the orderings, so we're hoping that it won't be too much strain on the group. What's different is the events that we're doing, the different initiatives with the community officer and the detective follow-up officer, the acting detective follow-up officer, that it's reason why we're doing the orderings is because our officers are getting an opportunity to work a variety of assignments, which means it's not because of other reasons, and that might bring the energy for people to want to work the extra hours. And that's what I have for you.
Great. Thank you, Chief. Any questions or comments from the commissioners?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Chief. We will move on to agenda item number 5, report from the fire department. Chief Pulvermacher.
Well, good afternoon.
everyone. I'm noticing in our staffing report that the final version didn't make it in your packet, so I'm going to have to update you on that final version. It looks like our hours, the mandates and the overtime for May were not included in this packet. I can tell you it's consistent with what we've seen in previous months, and the fact that we are still required to call in people on overtime and mandating people in. I can tell you that my hours served on the department have gone up significantly since Rich Roth, our deputy chief, who is a part-time deputy chief, put in full-time hours at a part-time salary. With his retirement, I'm filling a lot of those hours. So anywhere from what we saw at about 110 hours every pay period to 170, which is closer to 80 hours a week. Now, granted, some of those are from home. I do live in the city, so I'll cover some of those hours from home. But it's still a commitment from a restriction standpoint. There's only so many things I can do when I'm required to fill the car. So with that, it lends itself to what I'm going to ask about next. Let me finish the staffing report for you, though, real quick. We did bring on 2 career firefighters. That process was completed. They were sworn in this last week, actually on Monday, and they have started on shift already. And the reason why they've been able to start on shift already is because they came to us from our paid on premises and our intern staff. So that's a win-win for us and them. And not only have they invested time in a department that they can stay with, but now we can retain that talent. And that, to me, is exactly what that program is intended to do, is to identify that talent within our organization, to be able to address things like work ethic. We know exactly what they do, how they work, and what kind of job they can accomplish. And gives us a significant heads up as far as what kind of firefighter they are going to be. We've seen that those that come to us from our internal ranks have a tendency of having the most longevity, and some of that is just based on ownership. They feel like they're a part of the organization already, and they can take it to the next step because of the fact that they have that buy-in, that continual participation. So, with that, is there any questions about the staffing report?
No.
The next thing that we'll go over then is 5B, if that's all right. What we'll address is the internal promotional process for deputy chief. I've been before personnel, finance, and the council. All of those have approved this position. So we can move forward with it with the understanding that we have funding for this position. The final step is to get your approval for the process. And that process is outlined in your packet. We would basically advertise for 2 weeks because we're going to start with an internal process. If we can get an internal candidate, that creates upward progression for a number of people in the organization. So before we offer it to the outside, we're going to see what kind of candidate or candidates apply for it inside. We'll do that through the week of June. We'll do panel interviews, typically with the help of HR. We select a panel of not only internal but external firefighters and also community members. And we try to make sure that panel represents the community that we serve. So trying to address the diversity necessity of representing our community. So that panel will be selected. Those will begin probably the first week in July right away. Chiefs interviews will take place almost immediately after that. And then we're going to do something that the police department did with their lieutenant process, and that was the 360 process with firefighters that are in the department. It gives them an opportunity to provide comment and observation on the leadership style and capabilities of those that have applied for the position. Gives us a pretty good idea then from a command staff perspective of what those individuals are like in the station when we're not there. So that's another step that will be added that will not necessarily add to the process. It'll be handled in conjunction with everything else that is going on. So as soon as we know who our candidates are, then we'll be able to push out that survey. That survey will be anonymous so that those who are commenting can feel like they're not necessarily putting themselves at any increased risk for bias or anything else. And then from there, after we have all of that information from our panelists, from my interview, from the 360 feedback tool, and then that recommendation is going to come to you at our next PFC. We should be able to move this that quick. And then the conditional offer will take place the following day, probably that night, actually. Don't like to leave anybody hanging. And so, much like what happened in our firefighter process, what I do is I contact everybody who's been involved in the process personally, so they're not reading the results on an email that comes out from the department, and they can ask me questions about certain things and set up a meeting to be able to discuss processes moving forward. But ultimately, everybody gets a call that night, knowing full well that if they're invested in this process, they want to know what the results are. So even though it says the conditional offer will be provided the following day, chances are as soon as we're done with the Police and Fire Commission that evening, they'll know. Otherwise, the rumor mill starts going, and it's just better to address that up front. And then from a tentative start, once we have the results of the conditional offer, we can pretty much put that person on payroll right away. And then what that will allow us to do is to start looking for their replacement. Chances are this individual is going to come from one of our lieutenant spots. So then we have to follow up on the process that has been paused. We started the lieutenant process. It was paused based on the fact that we saw an urgency in the command staff that needed to be filled. And before we did that, we needed to make sure that those who were putting themselves in position for that lieutenant spot knew what they were getting themselves into. And so that will continue as we learn more about who our finalist is. So with that, that's pretty much the plan. And if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, I'd be happy to hear what they are.
Sure.
Chief, I do have a question. Chief, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Right. Is this to replace Chief Roth, so it would be a part-time deputy chief, or is this a full-time?
So it's actually both. So it is to replace Chief Roth, but his position is being made a full-time position now. So we will still have two deputy chiefs like we had before, but both of those deputy chiefs are going to be career.
That's great. Great to hear that. And then how do you notify everybody? I know summer is a hot time for vacation, make sure everybody gets a fair opportunity. Is there a process in place to help notify those who are on vacation that may want to apply? Because I know this is a short window.
Yeah, we pretty much have what amounts to 3 internal candidates. All 3 of those will be contacted directly.
And this is only being offered to current lieutenants? Is that the requirement?
Actually, not so much the requirement as the preference, because of the fact that they have experience in the leadership role.
But others can't apply?
You know what, that's a good point. So one of the things that we will make sure is that we can address the notification in 2 ways. Not only by email, but we can send out a department page that says that the applications have been posted for those that are interested. Then everybody who's on the department who should be keeping track of when we have calls will have access to that application.
Wonderful. I think that'd be fair. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
And Chief, just to be clear, the process you've outlined here is an internal promotional process only. So individuals outside the current department would not have access to that application process.
Correct. that would change if there are no internal candidates.
Okay.
So even if we have one candidate, I will run the process because it's important to make sure that we do the same type of qualification inventory as we do for just about any promotion. And this position needs to be earned, it's not given. So we want to make sure that we still continue on with this process, even if it's one person.
Any other thoughts, comments from commissioners?
I just have a quick comment. I think there's obviously an urgency for this, so I'm in full support of doing this quickly and totally in favor always, offering the opportunity within, because I think that really makes sense. So I wish you the best with it, and I hope it goes quick and smooth and you get a good one.
Thank you. The good news is that of our qualified candidates, I'm sure we have somebody who's going to be able to meet the demands of this position.
Great.
All right, any other thoughts, comments, questions? Okay, then Chief, you need a motion to start the process for this internal promotional process. So I'll move to approve the recommended process from the chief for the internal process for a deputy fire chief.
I'll second it.
And if I could make one suggestion is
Sure.
to also identify the 360-degree feedback tool.
Within the steps that you have outlined here?
Yep.
Sure. Okay. Any other discussion on the proposed motion? All right, all those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, hearing none, the motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Anything else, Chief Pulvermacher or Chief Morales for us?
What I will say from an emergency management standpoint is we do have some weather tonight. We did have some power outages in the city. Monday, there was about 100 of our citizens that were without power. We found out about it after the fact. So if for anything else, if there's anybody tuning into this program, just realize that if you have any issues and they're storm or power related, to reach out, because we want to make sure that first of all you have what you need in order to get through the storm, and especially those who are vulnerable because they have medical needs, equipment that requires electricity. We want to know about that too, so we can assist as best we can. And with the heat, check on your neighbors, especially those who are older. Heat issues have a tendency of accumulating, and so the more warm days that we get, the higher probability that heat illnesses will present in our community, especially in the very old and the very young. So that's just a PSA that I'd like to put out there with everything that's been going on this week.
Fair enough. Thank you to you both. We'll move on to item number 6 on the agenda, announcements. All right. What's that? Sure, a very good one. All right, well, hearing none, we'll move to item number 7 on the agenda, adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the PFC meeting.
All right, I'll second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. All right, we are adjourned. Record time.